Let's do this.
This is Roadmap to Retirement. Tune in for financial tips, investment strategies, and smart money moves to supercharge your retirement savings. Alex Neri, CFP, and guests are here to help you build your roadmap to retirement.
Tell the people who you are and why you're here.
Hi. Thanks for having me, Alex. Ashley Quamme. That's a great question why I'm here. I'm not really, I feel like you asked me and I said yes, and then here we are. I am a mental health practitioner. It's my home discipline, licensed marriage and family therapist who crossed over to the dark side of financial services several years ago, originally through financial therapy. I'm a certified financial therapist, also a certified financial behavior specialist. In my clinical practice for 12, 13, 14 years, specialized in working with couples where money shows up a lot more than maybe what we think. So really well versed in working with couples and families around money dynamics, money issues. And now the work that I do is primarily helping financial advisors, firms, and their clients around anything centered around attitudes, beliefs, financial psychology, all that good stuff.
Okay, love that. What was the inspiration for the crossover? So you were already a working professional, having some success in the world, and you decided, I'm going to pivot and focus on financial therapy. Wow.
Yeah, it's a great question. My husband, he's a CFP. So he's a financial planner partner here at a local firm. We live in the Augusta, Georgia area. So for those of you golf enthusiasts, you probably know what happens there every April. He and we've been together for almost 20 years at this point. And so naturally, just the work that we do, there's been a lot of conversations around money and relationships, being really privy to financial services and the work that financial advisors do. Really, the turning point for me was I started to notice that money showed up a lot in the room, and I really didn't know how to work with it. They don't teach us as in mental health practitioners how to help clients, individuals or couples or families. They don't teach us how to deal with money. It's just not really taught. We're taught about a lot of other things, a lot of other problems, but not helping people with relational money issues. And so I did what anyone would do when they don't know how to do something. I typed into Google how to help couples with money problems in therapy. And financial therapy showed up, and I became just really fascinated, really interested in that work, coupled with COVID, a little bit of burnout, maybe a lot of burnout in mental health, and really just decided to dive in and start working and focusing more in the financial advisory space.
Cool. Yeah, it turns out that a lot of couples fight about money. That's something that, who would have guessed that, right? So it sounds very organic that you came from the practice where you're talking about money all the time anyway, and you started to dive more into it and make it more of a focus. I think you see all these stats out there about how money problems are the number one cause for divorce or people fight about money. What has your experience been with just that? Do you feel that I've heard the argument made, and we had somebody on the podcast a few months ago, and he made the argument that people don't fight about money. They're fighting about other things. There's other problems in a relationship, and then it like manifests itself as a money problem.
Yes. Who was that? Who was that guest? I need to know who.
That was Nate. You asked me on the spot.
Nate Bagley. Is it Nate Bagley?
No.
Nathan Assel.
Yes. That guy.
Nathan Assel. Yeah, he is a good buddy. And actually, he is definitely one of the reasons why I got into, or how I got into, I should say, working with advisors. So yeah, I knew, yeah, he is,
Right.
I would say he is right. So I actually,
okay. You don't want to pick a fight with him right now? Because you can't.
No, I absolutely do not. No, I would say I have his back 1,000%. So yeah, I subscribe to the same belief. And that stems from really the work that I have done for well over a decade as a couples therapist. Couples don't come in, and money is a content issue, is normally what I say. It's the thing that we talk about, the thing that we fight about. However, if we stick our head below the waters and try to understand what's at the root of it, usually it's meaning, it's purpose, it's identity, it's a lot of other things. It's never actual numbers, though. And so, yeah, there's a lot of stats out there that are around why couples divorce. And I get from a research standpoint, from a survey standpoint, like how maybe that information, those statistics like come to be. Like I understand that. However, I think that they're incredibly misleading because really at the root of it is a lot of just other things. It's not numbers. It's not actual money.
I know You would probably argue, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, but a lot of relationship issues stem from just the communication around things. I'm sure money's no different from that. And one trend that I've noticed working with clients is all my clients that are couples in their 50s, 60s, 70s, they all have this very seamless combined finances. They have a shared bank account. I'm noticing a trend with probably millennials and a little bit of Gen X that they have separate checking accounts, separate savings accounts, and they live almost separately in their financial world. Do you notice that trend and agree with it? And two, what effect does that have on your financial happiness?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, whether I agree with it or not, I will say that I don't personally practice that. And quite frankly, I don't know how couples do because my brother and I, like, we share a few just joint expenses. And to remember to pay each other is like such a hassle. And we're not trying to do like groceries and utilities and just all of the other things. I don't practice that. My husband and I, everything is shared, everything is joint.
I'm not advocating for it. I'm just
No, yeah, I guess I like for me, it's I truly, yeah, I don't understand like practically like how couples do, but I know that they do because I've worked with them. The difficulty in keeping finances separate, and I do think to your point, Alex, that this is a lot more common amongst millennials and younger. The thing that makes it difficult is what we would call financial transparency. And if you're going to keep finances separate, which there is no judgment. It's not a right or a wrong. It just is. If you're going to keep them separate, the communication around finances, money, what's in accounts, what's coming in, now all of that just has to be a lot better there. And so that can make it tricky. It can make it really difficult for couples, especially if communicating from a vulnerable place, from a transparent place is already hard enough.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think it's to me from like a purely numbers, financial planning nerd standpoint, I spend a lot of time on tax planning. And if you and your spouse are not on the same page and you're making decisions like, should I be putting money into my 401k, into my Roth, and you're not looking at your joint tax return the same way, I think you're making a big mistake just from financial planning. And then there's all this stuff about transparency and being on the same page. And it's very easy to like assume that somebody else knows something like, oh yeah, she knows I have that bank account over there and she must know how much is in it. And like, how would they know that? You just assume that the other person is on the same page. And when you're in the everyday hustle of working every day, raising a family, doing everything else, you forget to sit down and have that conversation.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Which is why money dates are really important.
Money
Although,
dates, let's talk about that.
yeah, so money dates, it's it's a phrase, the credit does not belong to me. Phrase kind of expression there that a lot of folks in the advisory space or even the financial therapy space will use to encourage couples to talk about money. So think of it as a date because who wants to go to a budget meeting? Like nobody. So we don't really want to call we don't want to call it
That's
that.
good.
Like language is powerful, right? I call them money dates, but essentially they're conversations, designated times that you would have that you would sit down with your partner and talk about different things can be on the agenda. So I have a few different formats that I encourage couples to do. Some of it is about numbers, some of it is not about numbers, some of it is more around the emotional or psychological aspect of money. But being able to sit down intentionally with your partner and have these conversations, I say frequently as well. So making sure that we're consistent and we're frequent can really help, especially if we're keeping accounts separate. It can help with the transparency. It can help with communication. It helps with intimacy as well, something that often gets left out of finances. But yeah, so money dates, they're really great. Yeah, I think that there's no right or wrong way to do them. You can set them up however you want. Type them into Google. How do I do a money date? And I'm sure a lot of things will come up for you.
Okay, I might have a money date this weekend then. That sounds fun. Definitely, the more you talk about it, I think the better off everybody is. And one of the things that I see, and I'm sure you know all about this or have experienced it more than I have, is just having two people that have different philosophies about money, and a lot of it stems to either the way they were raised, or if there's a traumatic money experience somewhere along the way. So how do you facilitate that conversation as a therapist? Is it just a matter of getting them talking about it, or is there a point where they're just not compatible because of their money? What do you do when you have different views?
Yeah, I think one different views is very common. It can be common. What I find though is it's not so much that we have maybe the view is not so much of a value. Usually we want the same thing. It's just the how do we get there? piece that couples oftentimes find themselves getting stuck in when I'm working with a couple and there's a very clear difference around their money views or attitudes and beliefs. Dr. Brad Klontz calls them money scripts. My work is to really show clients, one, can we just name what these attitudes and beliefs are just out the gate? And can we start to view them as strengths? The fact that each of you has a different one. So, for example, a few common ones from Dr. Brad Klontz's work that come up are someone who is higher around money vigilance, being very watchful, being very mindful, vigilant, right, around money, spending. These tend to be your savers. They tend to be financial professionals, like the one I'm married to, but they're very interested in the details. They're great at saving. The downside is that sometimes they're not always great at enjoying their wealth. They're not good at spending on things that bring them pleasure and joy. You can imagine the conflict that would come up then
I'm
within a
great at
couple
spending.
system.
I'm a
Okay.
financial planner who is great at spending. So, oops.
Nothing wrong with that, right?
But spending on
And
different things. So I think that if she were standing next to me, we would have a conversation about, like, I wear the same clothes I've had for 10 years. I don't spend money on that. But
sure.
I'll go out to a bar or a restaurant and I don't really worry. I don't look at the prices on the menu. And that's not because I'm rich. I'm not. It's just I'm there to have a good time and have an experience. So to
A different
me, it's just like,
value.
yeah, I'm getting the steak and I'm going to get whatever bourbon I feel like I need to drink that night. And that's going to be what I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah. Some of it is just understanding where those beliefs come from. So for someone who is more money vigilant, understanding like where did that come from? That sense of vigilance that you need to pay attention to money very closely, and being able to look back at your life, your experiences through the lens of money. One of the exercises that I like to do is like a timeline exercise, and so we plot out just life events, positive or negative, that have occurred from your earliest money memory up until present. And we plot those out on the timeline and we start to imagine, we start to try to understand how have these experiences shaped the way that you think, feel, and do money presently. And so there's some interesting stuff that can come from that, right? Obviously, for a lot of people, things point back to their parents, which I don't know about you, Alex, but as a mom to a 12 and 11-year-old, that kind of scares me. It scares me. But we find that our experiences and our upbringing, what we saw through childlike eyes, what were the adults doing? How were they responding? Were they talking about money overtly, or were there subtleties there? Were there covert messages that were being sent to us? All of that we absorb mostly unconsciously, right? Some of it consciously, we absorb, and that goes on to shape why maybe someone might be vigilant around money or avoidant, or they want to keep up with the Joneses, right? Maybe they have a lower degree of like social indifference and they want the latest and greatest. Going back to that question around how to help couples, if you can go back, you and your partner, and just understand like where do some of the thoughts and feelings that I have and behaviors, where do they come from? How do they get here? Because we aren't just born with them. It can really shed light not only to yourself, but to each other, and hopefully add some context to where we can deepen our understanding of each other and maybe reduce friction or at least allow for conversation, greater conversation and intimacy to develop.
Yeah, I had kind of on the same topic. I had a conversation with another advisor recently. We're talking about our level of comfort with risk in our career. So to me, like from day one out of college, I didn't want to work for anybody. I wanted to be as close to self-employed as I could be, and I wanted to go out there and as a financial advisor, attract clients and grow. And this other advisor was talking to had a very different career path into it. He took more of what I would call a conservative path, where he worked for another advisor first, and he had a salary, and he moved his way up from there. And he asked me a question which I never really thought about. He said, what would have happened if you failed? So if 22-year-old me didn't make it in the business, what would have happened? And like in a literal sense, I knew I had the security blanket because my parents lived 20 minutes down the road. I could have moved back into my childhood bedroom and like I would have been okay. I wasn't going to be out in the streets. And for him, because of his upbringing and he wasn't close to family, for him, if he had failed at 22, he wouldn't have had that option. So I think he's always been less of a risk taker because of that, which came to mind while you were talking about just the experiences you had.
Yeah, risk is certainly from an attitude or a belief standpoint, it comes up a lot in couples. I'm sure you see this, whether it's in tax planning or investments or what have you, but different risk perspectives, our preferences, if you will, absolutely stem from just our upbringing and what we saw, what we experienced either directly and or indirectly.
That's your formidable years are definitely impactful. And I think when you think about financial security, you think about what's going on in the world today. And we're recording this on March 18th. If you're listening to this 6 months later, it's probably still true. There's stuff going on in the world. But there's always, we get questions as advisors from clients that rightfully said they saw something on the news or they read something on the internet. I was going to say in the paper, but they're probably not reading the paper anymore. They saw something online and they have a negative reaction to it. They have this gut feeling that, oh no, the world's going to end and this time's different. If you're not listening, air quotes, this time's different. And our job as advisors to talk them off the ledge and say, it's okay, we're going to stay the course, let's stick to the plan. And I think that different people have a harder time with that. There's people that have a lot of financial security, and I think they can put the blindfold on and ride the wave and get through the volatility. Whereas other people that maybe haven't had like the financial resources or the security in the past. So it all goes back to what you're saying, but I thought I'd add that in there.
Yeah, I think one thing too, I think age plays a big role in that. I don't know about for you, but like for me right now, like the clients who are the most anxious and nervous are either already in that next chapter of retirement or they're knocking on the door and you start seeing your portfolio decline. You start seeing that you're losing a lot. And all of a sudden, depending upon whether it's that time horizon or just your own risk tolerance, it's not uncommon then for anxiety to rear its ugly head and it can manifest in a lot of ways as you get to experience on the advisory end.
Yes. Money gets more real as you get closer to retirement. It's very easy when you're 35 to put the blindfold or it doesn't matter. I'm not using that money for 30 years. And then when you're 65, it's, hey, I need this money to live on and I just lost 10% of it. That doesn't feel as good. I will say, contradictory to what you're saying, is during COVID, when the market was down 20 whatever percent, I had the opposite experience. I felt like a lot of my older clients, because they've been through it before, they're like, oh, yeah, I remember 2008 and 2002. I remember all these times the market went down. So they got it. They were already with the program of it's going to come back around eventually. Let's stay the course. Whereas I had some younger clients, and if you think about somebody that was 35 years old in 2020, from the time they graduated college and started working, the market did nothing besides pretty much go up with very few exceptions. So for them, it was just like they checked their statement every year and they had more money, and that was great. And then 2020 comes around. It's like the first time they felt that loss. And I think in some ways, the younger generation had a problem with that. I don't know if maybe
Yeah,
that's
I
just
could.
my clients.
I'll say that is. I would say that my husband and I fit that age bracket, and I remember very clearly. To your point, like there was a lot of holding your breath during that time. Fortunately for Clayton and I, both of us being self-employed and in the service industry, mental health and financial services, we ended up doing pretty well.
Health is thriving right now.
Yeah. 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 I don't know. It's
Shouldn't brag about
yeah.
that, but it's a good business to be in.
Right. I'm pretty confident that there's some job security
Yes.
in that field for sure. I think that would make a lot of sense. That age bracket demographic, they're like really struggling during COVID for that reason.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So we're getting towards the end of our time. One question I did want to ask you is, you're a mother, you've got children. How do you talk to your kids about money? I think this is always an interesting topic for somebody like yourself that has financial expertise. Your husband does as well. So what are you guys doing to teach your kids about money so that by the time they're adults and they're financially independent, they have both good money habits, they have a healthy relationship with it, and they're just good people, right? We want good people.
Yeah, we probably talk too much about it. So I've jokingly said that having a mom that's a therapist and a dad that's a financial planner, they'll probably need therapy themselves one day, and we'll be happy to pay for it
Love it.
if it's about us. If it's about us, so something we did.
Sure.
We're pretty open, like with our kids. They're 11 and 12, so fifth and sixth grade. So they have a really good just understanding right now of like basic financial concepts. We also believe believe that there should be financial buy-in for some things. If we go on trips and vacations, like we talk about like just budgeting and them being able to pay for things, the big major buckets, saving. We talk about all of those areas with them. And we try to do a good job of modeling that as well. We're not perfect by any means. But one of the things that we also feel very strongly about is also sharing numbers with them. Now, granted, our kids are pretty mature and we didn't start sharing numbers when they were like 5 and 6, but we do share like numbers with them around like how much we earn, how much is our mortgage, what's in our investment accounts. Like we try to be transparent with them in a way to where they can see and experience just how to do that conversationally. So, I don't know if that's a good thing, Alex, if it's a bad thing. I mean, listen, I think like most parents, we're just out here trying to figure it out and
That's
doing the best we can
all you can
with
do.
what we know.
I
Yeah.
think the transparency is a big deal, though. I think for way too long, generations, money was always this thing you don't talk about. You don't talk about as a kid. You don't know what your parents make. You don't know what the mortgage costs. Like, you don't know any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I get it because I think a lot of that stems from you don't want your kids to go off to school and say, my mommy made $1 billion last year, because that doesn't sit well with certain people. But I think
Right.
if they can understand not only the budget that you're working with, but if they also see you making sacrifices of, easy example, like dad wants a new car, but he can't get it right now because we're also paying for Billy's soccer league. And you start to see that there's this trade-off and decisions to make around it. I don't think you want your kids to just grow up in the world of anytime you pull out your wallet, you can buy anything you want, and the credit card's this magic thing. I think to try to have an understanding of the foundation is important.
Yeah. Yeah. We also
That's a
frame
guy without
things.
kids saying that, so I don't know.
The last thing I guess I'll say about that is, and this is something that I talk about like with couples who have kids that are still living in the home, is we talk about our financial decisions as choices. So growing up, I don't know about you, but I always heard messaging of we can't afford this. But then I would see us spend money on things that wasn't congruent, right? And it was like, okay, that doesn't make sense. We can't afford this, but then we're gonna. So we talk about, we don't use that kind of language around like affording things. We talk about it as it being a choice. So presently, we are choosing to drive older vehicles that, look, I can't stay it. I'm ready to be done with. However, we are choosing to drive older vehicles that are paid off, that have been paid off, so that we can use that money that we would be spending on a car payment to go on trips and have experiences. So we talk about just what we are choosing to do, what we are choosing not to spend on, and what we are choosing to spend on, as a way of also helping at least our kids understand that you do have choice in the matter. And when it comes to your financial resources, everything is really a choice there.
Sounds like you guys are great parents. I think you're killing it.
Yeah, okay. I would like for you to go and tell my kids that
Okay.
I'm gonna get this on recording, and then yeah, I'm gonna let them listen to it and
Okay. Yes. Your
have them
parents
come
are
talk to you.
great. They're doing a great job. Mother's Day's coming up. Go shopping,
Also,
spend some money.
we're cool, right?
Also, very
Like,
cool.
cool.
Definitely cool.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to cover today?
No, I think yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's a great conversation. So I appreciate you having me. Yeah, on and
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on. This has been the Roadmap to Retirement podcast, and we will cut it there.
Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security or engage in any specific trading strategy. Results will vary. Past performance is no indication of future results or success. Market conditions change continuously. This commentary reflects the personal opinions, viewpoints, and analyses of Alexander Neri. It does not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, their clients, or their employees. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by Alexander Neri or RFG Advisory, or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, a registered investment advisor. Alexander Neri and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place.